Sometimes it feels like the sun will never rise, like the birds will never sing again. Believing a power greater than what you are going through. When you don't know what to do, keep breathing.
That's right. When you don't know what to do, just keep on breathing. From the City of Angels in Los Angeles, welcome to all my listeners out there in Radio Land. I'm Dave, the Caregiver's Caregiver, at caregiverdave.com, along with my lovely co-host, former mayor of a California beach town and best-selling author of The Happiest Corruption, Sleaze, Lies, and Suicide in a California Beach Town, Debbie, the Honorable Debbie Peterson. Also coming to you live and on demand 24/7 on numerous syndicated radio and podcast networks on 26 global audio and video platforms, including iHeartRadio, iTunes, YouTube, Spreaker, SoundCloud, Vimeo, Stitcher Radio, Blog Talk Radio, and a whole bunch more. And in fact, we are proud to be voted #1 caregiver podcast of the top 50 on Player FM and #2 on FeedSpot out of the top 60 and #2 on caringvillage.com. And we have an especially exciting show planned for you today. Mary Elaine Petrucci is a healthcare expert who's nearly 20 years of healthcare pharmaceutical sales and marketing experience with healthcare organizations. She has a master's in business administration in healthcare management from Boston University. Okay, and Mary Elaine is on the Advocacy Committee of the National Aging in Place Council since February 2023. Mary Elaine now holds designations as a master practitioner of timeline therapy, as well as trainer and institute head of neuro-linguistic programming and hydrotherapy. But I do want to take a moment to thank my last week's guest, Richard Allen, all about grief. And just a reminder, you can watch or listen to that interview and all our interviews on our membership website, caregiverdave.com, or any of our other 26 global audio and video platforms that I mentioned earlier. All right, enough of that. Mary Elaine, so nice to have you on. I always like
Thank you so much.
I always like to ask my guests who are here for the first time, just who is Mary Elaine Petrucci and why was she placed on this earth?
I was placed on this earth to help caregivers. Specifically, I was a caregiver for both my parents and helped them get the 24/7 care that they needed. I also did go to court 2 days before Christmas to seek guardianship of my mother because she had Alzheimer's and my father was in denial. She had fallen twice during that summer, went to rehab. She broke her collarbone and then went to rehab, came home, fell and broke her pelvis, went to rehab.
Oh my gosh.
So, yes.
He was in denial about her condition, and that's why she kept falling?
Yes.
She doesn't need a cane. She doesn't need a walker, that kind of stuff?
Basically, yes.
How sad. Denial is a terrible thing. It's not just a river in Egypt, you know.
So,
It really
Mary,
isn't.
what's the connection between the falls and the Alzheimer's?
Great question. My mother was diagnosed with Alzheimer's in June of 2002. She started falling in late summer of 2005. So after the second skilled nursing rehab visit, I asked Dad to place Mom on a memory care unit until we could bring her home with 24/7 care. At that point, my father initially was taking my mother home without me knowing it. He had a friend build a steep ramp outside the front door. So if Mom attempted to go down that ramp with her walker or was unsecured in her wheelchair, it would have been, I think.
Oh my.
So I would go to work, not knowing if I was going to have a phone call saying one or both of them were seriously injured or killed. And that's the reason why I went to court 2 days after Christmas with my attorney and Dad's attorney and Mom.
And how did Dad react to that insubordination, not following the chain of command?
Well, initially he made a comment that he would disown me, and I said, well, that is your choice. My choice is to help mom, and I would be doing a disservice to mom if I didn't stand up for her and advocate for her. And I said to Dad, if that's your choice, then I'll have to live with it.
Good girl. So
Were you the only family member dealing with it?
Yes, my brother passed away at 15, excuse me.
my.
So I was the only child to step in. The second nursing home informed me that they couldn't contact the adult protective services on mom's behalf because I was the closest kin to my mother. And so it was really up to me at that point to make that decision.
Why did they want to contact them?
Several reasons. Well, one in particular, though, in this nursing home, you had to go up a steep ramp to get onto the rehab floor.
Against the building code, no doubt.
And most likely.
Wonder how that happened. Former mayor, how does that happen?
No, I'll tell you, I saw it all the time. It happens, I think, because you have people who have no idea what it's really like to be in that situation, and they're making the choices and doing the designs, and they have no clue.
Or maybe they did it without a permit, right?
Mm-hmm. That too.
Well, so according to the staff at the nursing home, Dad had mom walk down that steep ramp with her walker, I guess, with no support. And when I heard that, I was pretty appalled. I'm a speech language pathologist by training, and I did work in independent assisted living facilities, memory care units, and long-term care facilities and home care during the summer. And that really scared me beyond belief. And like I had mentioned earlier, my father had a friend build that steep ramp outside the front door. So it just...
So we're talking about two steep ramps, one at the facility and one at the home.
Yes.
And why would they want to call protective services? Because it was their own ramp, wasn't it?
It's no, because Dad was allowing my mother to go down the ramp without support.
Oh, I see. They're both kind of guilty, aren't they?
Yes.
That's probably why they didn't do it. Wow.
So on your, you said you worked in facilities, nursing care facilities. What did you do when you were there?
I was a speech language pathologist. So I worked with clients with memory problems, cognitive issues. Some could be just a voice problem. It could be anything from like a traumatic brain injury. It could be Alzheimer's or dementia.
Now, when you
sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead, Deb.
Let me ask you a personal question. I had a traumatic brain injury, and I still am really not able to memorize things. I can only remember like 3 things. I know most people can do 5, not me. I sequenced 3. I think I was born that way, but I do have troubles, for instance, giving a speech. I will not be able to memorize a speech word for word. Is that something that neurolinguistics, and I'm sure there's lots of people out there who have this same problem if they've had strokes or are aging. Can neurolinguistics help with something like that?
It can to a certain point, but neurolinguistic programming really looks at negative emotions, limiting beliefs, some communication in terms of your meta programs. So you learn that we're bombarded with information, like 12 million bits of information a second. So it goes through our filters, distorting it, generalizing it, and deleting it based on our values and beliefs. And then we're left with about 7 plus or minus 2 bits of information that we can actually deal with. So that you can help the person. So a caregiver can help a person look at the responses that they're getting from their client, and then look at what information has been deleted, distorted, or generalized, so that the person being cared for is understood better, so that the caregiver can take care of that person more holistically and be able to communicate with them. They can also use representational systems, which are visual, auditory, gustatory, kinesthetic, auditory. And so, for example, if I, for example, said, I see your point. See is a visual construct.
Mhm.
So I'm talking to somebody who says, I hear that you had this promotion. Hear is an auditory word.
Right.
So if I am going to build rapport with you,
Sure.
I would say, you're right. I heard that there was this promotion and I went and applied for it. So you're speaking to the other person in their representational or communication system. So again, you're building that rapport with the person that you're caring for, and you're reducing like the chances for conflict or miscommunication.
Yeah. And then the third one is kinesthetic, the touchy-feely.
Yes,
I know how you feel. That's me
exactly.
too. Yes. So I want to ask you, you said
Sure.
both your parents needed 24/7 care. How did that begin, and how did it transform and transition into that? Because I always tell caregivers, if you're caring for someone who needs 24/7 care, it's
Mhm.
time to put them in a facility. And a lot of caregivers don't. They're getting up every 2 hours, maybe turning them over so they don't get bed sores, or they're not getting sleep. They're lucky if they get 2 hours sleep. In fact, I was told, it's hard to believe, that the average caregiver gets between 2 and 3 hours sleep a night. I mean, I can't survive on that. So how did it happen with you? I assume it started with your mother, and then
Yes.
your father. Did he get Alzheimer's or dementia too, or no?
He just had a memory problem.
Yeah.
So it wasn't considered dementia
Sure,
or
sure, sure. All
Alzheimer's.
right. So how did it start, the
Okay.
24/7, and how did you transition into it?
Okay. So after we went to court, or when we went to court, the judge declared that both my parents had to undergo neuropsychological evaluations by two separate neuropsychologists.
And did you apply for both of them, or that was his idea to get them both at the same time?
Yes, it was the judge's decision to do that because my father was the opposing party.
So you're saying he was a bad influence on your mother and was putting her in danger.
Yes.
So how did they pass? Obviously not.
Well, my mother's evaluation obviously showed she had a severe cognitive impairment and needed 24/7 care.
Okay. So there was no debate. She's going in a facility, right?
No, she was not going into a facility. Okay. That wasn't really a consideration. We did put her in a memory care unit until we could get through this process before I went to court, and we kept her in a facility until we could bring her home with 24/7 care.
Okay. Well, let me stop you there. I'll take this one step at a time. When
Sure.
you brought her home, I assume she still needed 24/7 care, yes?
Yes.
So how did you, a mere mortal, provide 24/7 care for your mother? I'm anxious to hear that.
That's a great question. I helped my father. Well, my father, let me go back.
Took
My
shifts?
Pardon me?
Did you and your father take shifts with her?
No, we didn't. My father did agree to bring my mother home with 24/7 care. And we brought her home on May 22nd, their 58th wedding anniversary, with 24/7 care. It was at that point my
What does
father.
that mean? You brought a live-in caregiver? Is that what you meant?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And who paid for that? Did they have finances?
My parents had finances.
Oh, good.
We also had to adjust the 3 shifts that were coming in. And we were moving toward having someone stay with mom for like 3 or 4 days and then have somebody else come in and take care of her. I was, in fact, I was managing to make sure that mom was getting the 24/7 care that she needed. I also paid for her participation in an adult daycare center twice a week. So she would be out getting.
Were you working full time?
Yes.
Okay. And your father, he wasn't working, he was retired,
Yes.
but he was of little help because of his impairment, whatever that was.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, are they still alive now or no?
No, they're not.
So I assume your mother died first.
Yes.
And then how did your father handle that?
He seemed to handle it fairly well. Initially, I had him stay with me for a short period of time until he could get more acclimated to living alone or with some support nearby. And I was doing a remote speech language pathology position.
Okay.
So I was like 3 to 5 hours away from Denver, and I was contacted by one of the 2 women who were providing housekeeping and cooking for my father. And one of them contacted me and informed me that my father was having memory problems.
Okay.
And so it was at that point I had to find 24/7 care for him to make sure he was safe and could be able to have someone there to help him if he should need it while I was working remotely.
Okay. You have any questions, Deb?
Well, I'm looking at some of the things that you had suggested you might like to say and talk about. And there are a couple of things, the statistics of caregivers and then the alarming statistics for the future. Could you talk to that a bit to kind of give us some perspective?
Definitely. About 35% of caregivers rate their health fair to poor. 40 to 70% of them have clinical symptoms of depression.
Mm-hmm.
And besides the stress, overwhelm, and burnout that they experience, 30% of them pass away or die before the one that they're caring for. So obviously, they're not taking care of themselves. Self-care is the last thing on their list, if it's on a list at all. The staggering statistics for me that I had discussed at the National Caregivers Conference in October was that 76 million more baby boomers will be retiring by 2030. That means that's 45% of the US workforce, and there will be no one to take care of them.
76% of who?
67 million baby boomers
67 million. Wow.
will be retiring by 2030, and that's 45% of our US workforce, and there will be no one to care for them. And that's why I'm working now with the National Aging in Place Council on their advocacy committee, because I want to make sure that caregivers are heard, that they're being seen, and that they're being recognized for what they do, because there's a huge financial impact on their retirement savings and employment opportunities that they no longer have once they become a full-time caregiver.
Yeah, that's why I like Debbie here as my co-host, because a lot of this just keeps coming around to political clout for caregivers, which they have none. You know, so many other people groups have got the hang of it. You know, the gay organizations and Alzheimer's very, very strong, and they have very strong funding, and caregivers in general got nothing.
And it's so important what you're doing, Mary Elaine, because as I always say, when you most need to advocate for yourself, you're least able to. And this is one of those situations. And so it's wonderful that you have somewhere that people can support, be involved, perhaps get supported. Can you tell us more about your advocacy?
I've been just the advocacy committee on the National Aging in Place Council formulated some legislation back in November, and we had a lobbyist speak to us in February, and he felt that it would be better if we kind of cut back on what we were asking just to make sure that it could get through Congress. Apparently, the president did sign some legislation for caregivers about a month and a half ago. It was pretty recent. However, there's a long way to go, because I would like to work with the advocacy committee so that we can find either a solution or to avoid this crisis we're going to have in 7 years. So
Yeah, I call it the tsunami on the horizon.
yes.
And what do you know exactly what he wrote into law and how much it involves and what you need to do to get it?
I think he gave some recognition to family caregivers.
Recognition?
And I think giving them some stipend or something for them.
On their tax forms, you mean?
Yes. Yes.
I wonder how you get that.
I will find out for you.
It must be starting this year, next year, retroactive. You know, details?
I don't know the specific
I
details.
wonder how we can find out.
I will find out for you, caregiver.
Thank you.
Dave, and the Honorable Debbie Peterson.
Debbie, I think I see some things on the state level too, and I don't know if you advocate on the state level. It's very difficult when there are 50 of them, but I do see, for instance, Hawaii is extremely strong on aging in place and
the most generous, yes.
Mm-hmm. At California, I think there are a few things that I saw on my tax forms this year, but they're nowhere near what we've got in Hawaii.
I think it's so important. Being a former caregiver, I understand the impacts that caregiving has on families. In my situation, for example, fortunately, my father didn't disown me. However, that was a possibility. And you have to step up where you feel comfortable.
Yeah.
I know it's a difficult situation for a lot of people. For example, I was reading a post in a Facebook caregiving group, and this woman was saying that her mother needed support. Her siblings wanted nothing to do with the mother, nothing to do with caregiving. And she was really torn because she herself did not have a good relationship with her mother. And I really felt that she had to heal herself before she could start caregiving for someone that she didn't have a really great relationship with. So that's where the neuro-linguistic programming comes in. I want to help caregivers with that so that they can overcome their stress, overwhelm, and burnout and have a more purpose-filled life.
How long would it take you to describe your first, second, and third key of caregiving? Because we're running out of time.
Yes. The first one is organization. So it's really important to have a daily, weekly, monthly calendar that you update on a regular basis. And you have like all the appointments, all of the caregivers' appointments, all the caregivees' appointments, all in one place. The second one is to have medication management. So there needs to be like a pill box or something in place, and you need to kind of coordinate when all of those prescriptions are refilled so that the caregiver can go to the pharmacy one time.
You know, there's great devices out there, automatic pill boxes that will alarm, and I bought one for my mother. And
Yes.
And then there was a point where she couldn't even do that. She thought the phone was ringing every time the thing went off. So go on, number 3.
And the second one, or the third one, it's just a health journal. The second key is really planning. So really knowing your loved one's medical condition, the resources in the community. The second one for that would be to have a list of providers that can help you in your specific area. And the third part of planning is to have an emergency binder. And in that emergency binder, you can put in like the patient journal that you keep, because then you could have a clear record of how the person's responding to his or her environment on a daily basis, and if there's been any change or not, so that if you have a medical appointment or an ER visit, you can bring the journal, patient journal,
Right.
and you can bring the emergency folder that has like all the medical insurance and legal information in it in one place. So then you can bring that and have all the information that you need available.
That's being very organized, and that will help like a substitute caregiver who comes in and doesn't know anything about anything, and it's essential. So
Definitely. And the last key is really self-care. So you've got to find a community that can help you. You need to reach out and ask for help, which is a challenge for many caregivers, and self-care. And if there's any way that anybody has further questions, I'm always available to talk with them.
yes.
Debbie, I didn't quite answer your question. I've had several head injuries myself. So yes, you could get an evaluation by a speech language pathologist, maybe in an outpatient clinic somewhere, and see if they can do some in-depth testing for like a mild head injury and see if they can give you some support.
Thank you. That's great. I appreciate that. And I think that your answer was better than had you answered my question anyway. It went to everyone. So, and I learned a lot from it. So that was great. Thanks.
You're welcome. I didn't want you to think I glossed over your question.
No, it's okay. This isn't about me. It's about our listeners. So you did it beautifully. Thank you.
And I found you on LinkedIn, but you were promoting something. What was it that you had on LinkedIn? Do you remember?
Several things tomorrow. Well, I do a free masterclass on Facebook on Wednesdays from 12 to 1, and I do it on kind of like a rotating basis. This is, I think, the third time around, on stress, burnout, lack of support, financial concerns, and lack of resources, as well as representational systems or communication, and now on boundaries. So tomorrow's will be on boundaries.
Oh.
So I've been promoting that, and I also have been looking at helping coaches as well in terms of the self-hypnosis training and like the 2.5-day certification course that I offer. So if they take an open book test, they're certified in 42 countries.
Wow.
So
how do they find you on Facebook?
Caregiver Lifeline Community is my group page. I also have my own personal page, Elaine Petrucci. I have Elaine Petrucci, healthcare expert, on Facebook as well.
All right. Thank you so much. I'm going to add this little segment to the interview as well through the magic of editing, because that's important.
It's been a pleasure. I really, when I saw the first message on LinkedIn I saw this morning, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm just ready. So
You're an early riser too, huh?
Well, I have a colleague that teaches a class in Toronto at 6:30 in the morning, Toronto time. It's 4:30 here in Colorado.
Nice.
So I'm up early.
Dedicated.
Yes.
Are you over 65 yet?
Yes.
Thank you so
Good
much,
for
Mary
you.
Elaine, for everything that you're doing, and it's really inspirational, very professional, and I think
Yeah.
it'll be a great help to people. I'm going to send you an email because I
Yes.
have a friend who's kind of in the self-caregiving situation, and those 3 tips you gave would be perfect for her. So I'll send you an email. Thank you.
And I want to connect you with a friend that's in my mastermind. She's a therapist, and she's currently trying to promote her self-hypnosis classes to help people get certified as well. Maybe you two can brainstorm together and see what she does, see what you do.
Mhm.
Because she's having trouble getting a lot of traditional doctors to even be open to the idea because they're so close-minded, you know. Do you find that as well?
Well, yes, and even some of the coaches that I've been in contact with seem skeptical, or they've
Yeah, or they're downright against
and
it.
don't want to do it, or they've been trained in something as an offshoot to hypnotherapy. What I offer is different in the sense that I can do the hypnotherapy and certify them in a 2.5-day certification class. I can help them go through like the practitioner, master practitioner courses that they need to learn more about the techniques that they can utilize with their clients to get better success in their coaching business. So, and I'm one of a very few
Yeah.
can really certify them and designate them in 42 countries.
Wow.
Other practitioners cannot do that. So I'm offering them, a better option in the sense that
Yeah.
they can be respected in more countries.
All right. Well, her name is Laura Timon, and she might be contacting you.
Thank you. I
I'll
appreciate
send you.
that.
I'll send you her information as well.
Thank you. Thank you again.
I
Likewise.
actually,
Pleasure meeting and talking with both of you today.
The pleasure's ours.
yeah.
It's been amazing to have this.
You're an amazing woman. We should call you the Honorable Mary Elaine.
Absolutely. And
Yes.
it's occurred to me, I would love to have you come on to my podcast. It's called Corruption Chronicles because the books I wrote were about the corruption I found, how I fixed it. And I have a family history too, which we won't talk about now. But I would just love to interview you on what your mother did. If it's usually half an hour, same as this. So I'll shoot you an email, and if you're open to talking about your grandmother, especially because it's a woman and it's women who do that. So it would be wonderful.
Yes, I would love to. Can I just share something really quickly?
Sure.
This founder of a theater troupe contacted me like last February. We still don't know how he got my contact information. So I was on Zoom, and I just thought I was giving him information about grandma. The theater troupe does plays on social activism. So they were doing it on strikes. So they were talking about the Denver International Airport strike, the King Super grocery store strike. We were talking about the Cisco, the big warehouse food company, and there was several, the Denver Public Library. So we decided that we would bring in my grandmother. So what we did was initially we picked this high school classroom, and we picked a school district that had recently, the new school board had ousted like the superintendent illegally. So we were using that school district, saying that the teacher was teaching history and the superintendent was watching the teacher, and he dismissed her because she wasn't teaching the school district's curriculum. And so the student said, well, the teacher would allow them to talk about their mother and the strike at King Soopers. And somebody else, another student mentioned Ludlow and how Rockefeller killed women and children. And the superintendent says, that was just a fluke, no big thing. But he wanted them to write about the barons of industry like Rockefeller, like Tabor, and all of these people. And then the students fall asleep. I come on and I wake the students up, and I'm I'm Mary Petrucci. I came here from Ludlow, and I'd like to show you more about Colorado history. So we were practicing it in a college classroom. So they would be playing the Arlo Guthrie song in the background, and they would have a picture of the pit. So I would walk students up and around the classroom, and then we would get to the pit on the other side of the classroom, and I talked about it briefly. And I then walked to the middle of the stage and say, I'm Mary Elaine Petrucci. I just portrayed my grandmother, Mary Petrucci. My grandmother and another woman were the only two that walked out of that pit alive.
Wow.
And I said, I'm so proud of my grandparents, the miners, their families, and the children that stood up to Rockefeller, the governor, the Brink Security, and the Colorado militia. I feel honored for that. And so but let me just explain. So I had no idea where we were going to have the first play. We had it at the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 68, that my father belonged to for 65 years.
Oh, wow.
The food that evening was supplied by the United Mine Workers of America. And I'm like, okay, way too much. Yeah, it was pretty earth-shaking. So it was really outstanding to portray my grandmother in that situation.
That's
Wow.
wonderful.
Yeah.
That would be just a really fascinating podcast to do, and I'd love to. So I'll email you and we'll set up a time.
Great.
Yeah, I'm actually going to extend this interview because there's just a lot of good stuff here that should be in it. Might go to 45 minutes.
Thank you. I wanted to share my passion for why I do what I do for caregivers and people without health care.
I think we have a pretty good idea now.
I just wanted to, again, thank you for giving me this opportunity. I really do want to advocate for caregivers. I want them to be seen, and I want them to be heard, and I want them to be recognized. And I'm here to help them in any way I can.
And, I'll send you the information on my Acapulco retreat also, because as far as I'm concerned, there's only 3 ways to save a caregiver's life. And it's a 3-pronged thing, one-on-one coaching to get through to them, because a lot of them are like your father, just in denial about things,
Mm-hmm.
And then getting them around other caregivers to brainstorm, like a support group. And I call it a mastermind, and then take them away, on a vacation to some exotic place, because many of these people, I'd spent 30 years since I've been on vacation. Some people say, I've never been on vacation, 50 years. And they don't know what a vacation is. They don't know how to relax. They don't know how to de-stress.
They don't.
Stress is the killer,
Right. I totally agree with that. I do also have a caregiver community, Lifeline community membership site. I've been kind of putting it on hold until I get my caregiver programs up and running. But it
you have
has
an email list as well?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Well, if you feel led to share on your list what I do, it's up to you. I don't want to presume.
I appreciate that you're doing, that mastermind. That was part of why I did the community, because I felt like at least they could connect with each other, with the speakers that I had on conferences, and also with myself. And then I had resources, and then all the speakers, programs, and everything on there.
And, caregivers tend to be cheap and frugal, and, they'll cut off their nose to spite their face. Of course, it costs money, and they say, well, I can't afford that. I says, well, you can't afford not to. I mean, if you go down, you're in the hospital. And a lot of the plans now have $5,000 minimum out of pocket. I said, where are you going to get that from? Well, if you have to pay, you'll find the money somewhere. And it's just sad that so many of them don't realize that this is going to prevent you from spending money down the road. It's going to save your life, because if you don't die, you'll either become hospitalized and eventually need a caregiver of your own. And then what's going to happen to grandma? Who's going to take care of her? Some sibling might, who doesn't have the compassion and the empathy you have, just stick her in some county nursing home. And, a lot of places I wouldn't put my cat in,
Yeah.
Well, not only that, but there's not going to be any caregivers in those places to take care of them. So,
that's a scary
those aren't
thought.
going to be really options in the future. So, unless we,
And you talk about strikes, if all the caregivers in America went on strike for a day, the whole system would collapse.
Oh, it would.
And that would get politicians' attention. And, there must be something that can be done. I know we're not doing enough, but it's hard to motivate caregivers to do stuff other than their little grind that they do and their little narrow focused attention. Very rarely do they look up and see what's going on. They're just so focused.
So let me ask you two things. So are you finding, this is what I was finding, but I just curious, are these caregivers that are in your mastermind, are they identifying as a caregiver?
Yes. They're I'm talking about my Facebook page, 34,000 of them. And, many of them will like, share, and comment on cute little funny caregiver memes. I'll get the highest on that. But when I post my show or some information that would actually help them, a handful respond. It's like, I don't have time for that. I don't have time to watch a video. I don't have time to listen to a podcast. I don't have time to listen to your 5-minute wisdom on, what I should do to stay alive. But send me a funny little cartoon meme about caregivers. I'll click that. I'll share that. I'll comment on that.
I know that's what I'm finding in the caregiver group. They're not really responding to any of like the master classes I'm doing, whether it's on Wednesday afternoon.
Yeah, join the club.
Okay, well, I was just
Now they
wondering if I
like
would
pictures
be able
of
to
my
do it.
granddaughter, and they like pictures of my dog, and they like pictures of my wife who's all dressed up like the Queen of England. Just frivolous stuff that is not going to help them. I think they like distractions from what they're doing. They want to be entertained, and we'll entertain them in Acapulco, but it's a commitment.
Are they paying for that though?
Are they paying for what?
The Acapulco experience.
No, we're finally going after wealthier caregivers who are retired and maybe ill, and they are paying facilities to have the caregiver come, and they're paying good money. And I met, a few of those at the expo that I did, and they're very grateful. I love my caregiver Susie. I'm going to send her on this Acapulco thing, and in fact, give me all 3 of your books. I'm going to buy them for her, and they can afford it, and they just have a different mentality. Because if you're not paying for something, it's like there's a perceived value that it's not worth anything because it's free.
Right, exactly. So, how are you attracting then these wealthier caregivers or people that need it?
We're experimenting, and we're doing Facebook campaigns to the ones who are in wealthier zip codes, the ones who are in wealthier occupations, because doctors, lawyers, nurses, theoretically, a third of every sector of the population, every sector of demographics are caregivers, And maybe they can afford to, maybe they don't do it themselves, but they can afford to hire a caregiver, but they're still mentally attached to their loved one. And even though they're not physically putting the time in, they're worried about them. And, they go over there a lot. and they see things, and like someone was just telling me that their mother won't listen to them. I was just on a coaching call today, and she says, she won't wear her medallion. And I says, Mom, you have to wear that. She said, no, I have my cell phone. Well, if you fall, that cell phone could go flying. Don't tell me what to do. I'm fine, and so that's mental stress, because they worry. Oh my gosh, what if she falls?
Right.
Oh my gosh, oh my gosh. And so there's different kinds of stress: mental stress, physical stress, emotional stress.
Mhm.
And so it's a tough occupation. And
Well,
I've just resolved myself. I'm not going to be able to help all of them. I think a third of them will never be able to be helped. They're just uncoachable. They're unsavable. I mean, that's a terrible attitude to have, but just from my experience of seeing my Facebook group, it's like, it's hard to be optimistic with a group of them. I make it as high as 30%. In fact, coincidentally, the same number that are going to die before their loved ones do, because they just don't get it. They're just in denial, like your father was. He's sitting there allowing his wife to do dangerous things that could kill her or cripple her, and he's totally oblivious to it. And that's the caregiver I'm talking about, because he was technically her caregiver. He should have been involved.
well, he exactly.
As a husband, you are a caregiver to your wife, regardless of what condition she's in. You're there to protect her.
Well, exactly. And when Mom fell the second time and broke her pelvis, I guess Dad turned around to close the back door, and she fell.
Yeah.
I don't know. He had me talk with a
It's just
friend.
ignorance, not
Yeah.
ignorance of the law, as the cops say, is no excuse. Ignorance
Well,
just means you don't know what you don't know.
That's true. I had another. My father had me speak to a friend of theirs, and she was giving me an example where this couple were living alone, and I guess one of them had Alzheimer's or dementia, and there were flights of stairs to the basement, and she felt it was fine for the two of them to make the decisions by themselves. And I'm like, well, if they had no one there to support them, maybe, but that doesn't mean I can do that for Mom and feel like I stood up for her and advocated for her, because if I didn't, I would feel horrible.
Sure.
So I don't know. I even had a friend who his father was a neurosurgeon, and her mother passed away in August. And I was going through this crisis, I guess, in the fall. And when she called it Thanksgiving, I couldn't even help her with her grief because I was going through my own crisis. And years later, she said she didn't understand why I did that. I should have let my parents alone. And I'm like, really?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's the mentality these days of the younger generations.
They don't want to take care of anyone. I don't know where we're getting these caregivers, but it's great to have all these senior centers and residences, but there's nobody who's going to even work in them.
Yeah.
So the whole thing is pretty frightening, especially with that crisis that's coming up.
I remember years ago, decades ago, the Chinese said one child, that's it, and they were even aborting, second, and third, and fourth child. And now they've reneged on that. They realized they made a terrible mistake. You know why? Because as those parents got older, there was only one child to be the potential caregiver. And they realized that the odds of one child being, an ideal candidate, because, you might have 5 kids and only one of them do they want, or only one of them is qualified with the right temperament and emotional and empathy, etc. And they're realizing that they need more children for the pool of caregivers to take care of them because they've got to take care of them, the government, and they cost money, So there you go. Even the communist Chinese are learning the importance of caregivers.
Well, the other thing, if you're going to, I think a few months ago, somebody was saying, all right, so about half, I'm just throwing that figure out, but of physicians are nearing retirement age. So I guess in the 80s or something, since there was a glut of physicians coming out of medical school, I guess the government cut back on funding for each of the schools, so they produce fewer and fewer physicians. Well, again, we're going to have another crisis because nobody's going to be there to take care of anyone. So it's a vicious circle.
Well, we have run out of time, but I do want to give you a chance to talk about, you have a special offer.
My free offer is the 5 stepping stones to caregiving. So it looks at the financial, legal, medical, insurance, and self-care. And at the back of the pamphlet are check sheets. So you can check off whether you have like all this documentation in place and ready before an emergency takes place.
Well, I want one of those. How do we get it?
Me too.
You would email me at Petrucci, Petrucci 2002 @gmail.com.
And any books out there? Are you an author?
Yes, I am. I did the One Habit for Thriving in a Post-COVID World and the One Habit Leadership book as well. And I also was a contributor in the Voice of Women book.
Wow. You're a busy girl. You're on the National Aging in Place Council, and you're an author, and you're very, you're an activist, I guess it would say. Advocacy.
It is. It's part of my family legacy. Briefly, my grandparents were striking in the coal fields in southern Colorado.
Oh, wow.
So Rockefeller moved them from company housing into a tent colony in the fall of 1913. By February, March, my grandparents' oldest son became sick, and the coal operators denied my grandmother access to take a train 14 miles to get medical care.
Wow.
And that child passed away. And a month and a half later, they lost the remaining 3 children in the Ludlow massacre, where the governor sent in the Colorado militia without declaring martial law. They sent in Brink security and a lot of other support services. So my grandmother was able to go with 2 other women from Ludlow, with Mother Jones, who was one of the strike organizers, and a judge from Denver. And they went on a speaking tour to Chicago, New York, and Washington, D.C. And I do have my grandmother's written testimony before Congress.
Wow.
So it's a family legacy for me. I want to have a family foundation for caregivers.
You and Mayor Debbie have a lot to talk about.
Yes.
You could be very helpful to each other in connecting. She's a great resource in your political activities, and I'm very impressed.
Thank you.
And
Me too.
I'd love to learn more about the National Aging in Place Council and maybe get involved myself. So we'll keep in touch and we'll keep talking.
That would be great. I appreciate the opportunity to be here to talk and to speak on behalf of caregivers.
And I met you on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is becoming to be more and more resourceful for meeting people of like minds and like occupations, etc. So thank you so much for coming on the show. I appreciate it very much, and we learned a lot. And Debbie, how can people get a hold of you if they want to become more politically active in their community?
The easiest way is just to go to my website, debbiepeterson.com, just my name.com. And there are links to books, links to podcasts, links to online course that is really helpful if you want to be effective.
And you were a caregiver to your mother as well, right?
I was. And every time we meet, I think about that. And for me, it was a wonderful time because my mom got it. I was really fortunate.
Yes. I like to say, if you're not a caregiver out there, just wait. You're either going to become one or need one. And so with that,
Exactly.
I will say thank you very much. And basically to all my listeners out there, I just want to thank you for making us the #1 podcast on the internet. And just a reminder that my newly released book, Secrets from the Hammock, Uncommon Wisdom for Uncommon Times, is available wherever books are sold, and even on caregiverdave.com, my membership website, my free membership website. And if you join my community of 34,000 Facebook followers, you'll learn all about my new Acapulco Villa Caregiver Wellness Retreat and Vacation that I offer to burned out caregivers. Trying to keep as many of those 30% of caregivers who die before their loved ones do alive. And I just found out a new statistic. 40% of Alzheimer's caregivers die before their loved ones do, and 70% of caregivers over the age of 70 die before their loved ones do. So, I mean, if you want to stay alive, you got to look into this or prolong your life anyway. So, again, thanks to all my listeners out there. If you see a like or follow button, please hit it. It helps Google do something with their analytics that make us reach more people. So until next week, same time, same channel, may God richly bless you all. Bye-bye. Hey everybody, it's Dave Nassani, otherwise known as Caregiver Dave, and I'm coming to you live from this beautiful Acapulco villa, which I like to say is the perfect prescription for caregiver burnout. And I have a unique opportunity to bring 14 burned out caregivers up here so that they can decompress and do all the things that they need to do. But this is just a bonus. It actually comes with the 6-month Zoom coaching program. It's a one-on-one consult with me, Caregiver Dave, to identify where you are and where you need to go. It's a 6-monthly small group coaching sessions to smash any obstacles between you and your ideal vision of what a caregiver needs to be and caregiver success. You get my 3 free books and instructions on boundaries, grief, self-care, organization, asking for help, learning how to say no, avoiding burnout, avoiding depression, avoiding perfectionism, avoiding isolation, avoiding resentment, delegation, team building, how to have fun, how to have no guilt, the importance of gratitude, and after caregiving, when you're no longer a caregiver. But this 7-day bonus is absolutely free. It comes with the coaching program that you pay for. And the food is all inclusive. I'm telling you, 7 days and 7 nights here is amazing. This is truly paradise. And I highly recommend it. For more information, go to caregiverdave.com. That's going to send you to my other website. And if you want a shortcut to get there immediately, just go to acapulcodave.com. Thanks again. I look forward to seeing you in Acapulco.
Sometimes it feels like the sun will never rise, like the birds will never sing again.